I think most people here, I recognize the names, most people will know who I am. But for anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Barry Cranford. So I'm the founder of the LJC Lunchtime community and also the MD of RecWorks. I run a recruitment company. I won't give a big intro, but we'll put some blurb on the chat there. So if you want to find out more about who we are and what we do and that kind of thing, then feel free. We can basically help in loads and loads of different ways. Obviously help you find a job, but also we do like a mentoring scheme, aspiring CTO groups, aspiring principal engineers. So there's loads and loads of stuff in there. Feel free to have a read. And yeah, I'll be on there. So without further ado, we're closing in on 12:35, 22 participants, perfect. So we have our first speaker then. Dom, remind me who's on first?
Stephen Powell is on first.
Fantastic. All right, Stephen, whenever you're ready then, mate, feel free to share your screen and crack on.
Thank you very much, Barry. I will share my screen. And where is the actual button for presenting? There we are. Is that good for everyone? Brilliant. Okay, so my talk today is about the feelings I've had and what I hear from a lot of mentees and a lot of other people who start this, which is you can learn a programming language and that's absolutely fine, but then you start your first developing job and people are like, Agile this and do this ticket and push this up to the repo and set up your environment and God knows, and it's just absolutely terrifying, to be quite frank. And recently, I've been coding for a long time, but I've just started being a software engineer proper. And even for me, who's been doing a lot around it for a long time, it was still a hard jolt. So I appreciate if it is for everyone. But there's an awful lack of resources around being able to actually practice doing the workplace. And there's lots of reasons for that. Lots of reasons that I think, and that's a bit beyond the scope of it. But I want to do something about it. And I think that the Meet to Mentor scheme is a great banner to do it under. So I have produced a project called Thoth, named after the Egyptian god of learning, basically because I couldn't think of a snappy title. And if you can't think of that, you might as well go with something pretentious. So this is a project supporting novice software developers to learn necessary accompanying skills to complement a new career. My goals to help novices navigate the world of working in software development and to help mentors prepare their novice mentees. The skills are broken up into about 3 different types. One is coding, repos, testing, and bugs, to do with the actual reading and writing and reviewing of the code itself. The next bit is Agile, Workflow, Kanban, Jira, the actual kind of how you do your work, how do you let others know, how do you review things, how do you send your stuff off to be reviewed, what's good practice, what's the don't do's and what's the do-do's. And the third is Git DevOps. All of these kind of overflow into each other, but they're the general breakups. The reason why coding is only half the job, and people are ill prepared, as I say, I think generally, to do all the other bits, and there are few resources to practice. So here's an example of different things that you might have from the different sections. I'm not going to read them all out, but for coding, you've got actually creating features, fixing bugs, solving builds, dealing with environments, creating tests, creating tests for your own code, creating tests for other people's, maybe even creating functions from tests. Okay, for Agile and Workflow, you've got the whole dealing with ticketing system. You've got finding out information from other members of staff, whether they be designers or business analysts. You've got sometimes tickets don't have everything that you need them to. You've got to go here and there and to find things out. And then you've got the Git DevOps side, which is obviously all the pushing and pulling and servers and environments and containers and all that stuff. Now, the idea that I have is that each activity that a mentee takes on should have a little bit of each of these and should obviously incrementally get more difficult. So I would like to say that each activity takes one of these, and those activities generally flow into more difficult ones from all of those areas. This produces kind of a more holistic view to improving as a software developer. Oh, skipped forward too many. No, it hasn't. I've just obviously put this together wrong. So where are we at the moment? I have an actual RecWorks Meter Mentor Thoth Git repository, and that has got a statement of intent, something about team leaders, and learning points in React. And that's basically just an example of some steps in increasing difficulty about how a mentee might learn React. And we have a Kanban board of things to do for the project. Not a Kanban board for one of the projects that mentees will be doing, but an actual Kanban board for things that I think need to be done for the project Thoth. Now, what I need contributors to create and upkeep projects on there. Mentees taking an active role, because I think that just as importantly as mentees doing the actual task, they will learn even more from contributing to help other mentees. This one is quite a tricky one, a method to use the Git repos where a mentee can take a task, complete a task, have it reviewed by either a mentor or another mentee, but then the task reset itself to how it was before, without millions of branches being left over. So I've not come up with a solution for that, and I need a bit of a Git champion for that. So, and champions for coding, Agile, Git, and Ops. So people who would take a kind of supervisory role about the content, about what would be in Thoth. And as Meter Mentor or RecWorks, I'm not quite sure, specifies, I need a co-leader for this project. So I think that there's a really amazing spread of potential for this, where you could replicate scenarios such as difficult or uncooperative colleagues, or having to deal with everyone else using Mac and you've got to use Windows, and how you have to set your environment up for that. And you could simulate a whole host of different things, which are really terrifying when you come up against them when you start your first software development role. I think this will be really useful. We could create a real ecosystem in here, and it would run just like any other Git software development projects. And I really hope that some other people find this an interesting concept and would want to work on it and create a resource for all the mentors and mentees in the RecWorks Meter Mentor scheme. And that's about it. And I know that there's a massive whistle-stop tour. I absolutely welcome any questions.
That was brilliant. Thanks, Stephen. Really, really interesting. Obviously heard parts about this, but interesting to see what's been going on there. I'd love to hear if there are questions from any juniors out there that that this captured any interest. But just before, so if you've got any questions or anything like that, and please unmute your mic, and I should be able to see who you are, and I'll read a question to you. But just quickly, Stephen, if we roll forward 6 months, 12 months down the line, what does good look like for you here? What would be, what would success look like if this is done really well, like 12 months down the line, and you're giving another talk on my first 12 months running this? What would be ideal?
What I would like to see is just a really rolling collaborative system of this happening. And I would like it to be run mostly by mentees, not because I'm lazy and I don't actually do it, but because I think that is probably the most useful system for them. Because as someone who was a teacher and has taught in adults, children in many other ways, I know that the best way that you can learn is by teaching people. And for them to be involved in creating this, I think would be a fantastic simulation. I would like to see it done in a number of different languages. I can only give advice for some of them, but I do think that you would need to have, say, a React one, a React JavaScript one, or web development one, and you would need to see a roughly equivalent Java or Python or whatever type of one, where they obviously learn different elements of the language, but would learn similar parts of the Agile and Ops parts of those. And those would be quite similar from language to language. So I would need people who were proficient in different languages to be able to translate one repo to another. So I would like to see people of different knowledges say, okay, I think that this is a great skill, but we need to teach this one earlier. So we're going to amend this task or introduce a new task or activity at this point. People saying, okay, this resource for learning how to do this thing on this activity is really good, but I think that we can get the learning time from 3 minutes reading down to 1 minute reading, because I think it needs to be short and snappy. But the actual learning bit, I think it should be focused on practice rather than learning. So people who can bring things down to a really core basic level, I think would be really interesting. So yeah, it's just a thriving ecosystem, basically, an open source, busy, constantly being reviewed, people talking project. That's what I would love to see, a self-sustaining ecosystem within the learning space.
Amazing. Okay, we might be running over time. We're going to get to 12:45 now, so it's going to be time for the next one. So any questions, any people that are interested in finding out more, feel free to drop Stephen a message through the chat, which you can do directly. But yeah, I think there's going to be more to hear from that. So I'm really interested in how that goes, and obviously anything we can do to assist, then just let us know.
Thank you very much, Barry. And yes, please, if you want to get involved in any way, please just drop me a Slack.
Okay, Dom, who's up next?
I think it's me.
Oh, I'm glad someone knows.
Over to you then, Tony.
Yeah. First of all, hi all. Thank you all for coming. Hope you're having a great lunch. And thank you very much, RecWorks, for this opportunity to have this talk here. It's always good to have presentations, especially about my favorite subject. It's me, especially if I have the opportunity to see how awesome developer I am, to say the best code I have written. Yeah, a little bit more about me is I'm Tony Bernardino. Last name is a bit hard to spell. And I'm a developer at TransferWise at the moment, or Wise, as you prefer, because they changed the name this week to Wise. And I'm a long-time Java developer. Okay, so which code is the best code I ever written so far? As Catback says, every good answer starts with, it depends. And for me, it depends when you ask me. If you ask me when I first started, it was a code that worked. I actually did what was supposed to do. And I remember it was a very simple case that just drew a Christmas tree on the screen. It was very basic, but it worked. So I was very proud of it. When I graduated, it was the smart code. The smart code, what I call smart code, is that code that I put so much effort in, make it so good, and to avoid that little if or that extra cycle that we have there. And during the process, to try to optimize so much the code, everything got so messy, so entangled, that the advantage that I got from doing those little tweaks, it was nothing, because I knew what made the program very slow was not the executing those little lines. It was accessing the database and accessing the network. The code got so nasty that I remember going back to certain codes that I wrote, and I thought at the time that they were awesome. But after all, when I got back to them, I couldn't understand nothing. I think we all been a bit there. That come up with a very weird code. It works, yeah, but no one understands it except the guy that wrote it. That was a very good learning experience, is not to do smart code. And then I had other phases. It's been a very interesting life of mine. I have the perfect code. The perfect code is, okay, I'm going to do it so pretty, and it's so elegant, everything, but I still need to do this because that's how it's going to make it perfect. And I kept going and changing. And as you can see, that end up not finishing. I would take a long time to write everything. Then I found out design patterns, and I tried to apply design patterns all over the place, and it was horrible. Then I discovered testing. I thought the best code was the one that had 100% test coverage. And most recently, I had the functional programming paradigm. And what I tried to do is everything had to be functional programming alike. So I overdid it. as you can see, what happened is every time I discover something, I overdid it. Yeah, so let me first of all tell you where I'm now. What I aim for when I'm coding. First of all, I'm worried about performance, of course. If it's code that it's not, if the service, what I'm doing has good performance. Also simple. Sometimes I prefer a simple approach, a simple solution over one that might be better, but it's more complex. It's harder to understand, especially if the gain is so little that we gain. I'm also worried about other people, make it readable, so people that can actually understand the code that I produced faster. And of course, maintainability, meaning how we can actually maintain this code in the future, repurpose for the purpose that we want. And of course, this includes making it readable, like I said, make it simple, but also worried about the design that we have from it. Okay, so what is the best code now? The best code now is the code I've never written. I can see that you're thinking two things. First of all, the code that this guy wrote sucks all the time. No. And the other thing you might be thinking is, oh, it's very philosophical because he's always progressing. So the code is writing now is always improving, and that's why I'm saying the best code I've never written. It's not exactly. There's one thing I tell is when is no code is better? Well, first of all, there's one thing I would like to let you in is why do we write code? And we write code to provide value. So if I write code that has absolutely no value, what's the point of writing it? And what my concern here is usually always to aim for a solution that it provides the most valuable possible and try to avoid writing that it's not needed. And that, as you can see, is the very, very beautiful code. Yeah, and that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tony. Appreciate that. Funny enough, it reminds me of an interview we did recently with a guy for the aspiring principal engineers that had created his own coding test for people. And he was talking us through his story, and he said at this point he thought he was a brilliant coder, and then he sort of hit a glass ceiling, and then he smashed it, and then he's like, what I knew then was rubbish, but what I know now is great. And his whole career has just been doing that over and over again. Remind me of that at the beginning there. But no, great, very interesting. Did anyone have any questions at all for Tony?
Or I was very clear, or I didn't make any sense at all.
Maybe good. I can't see any mics coming up. So, Alex, yes, Alex, I've seen you.
Hi, Tony. So I used to have a manager that actually loved switching off systems because it meant it didn't have to support them anymore. I'm wondering, do you want to include maybe the best code is code that you remove that you don't need anymore, or something like that? Do you have a feeling about that?
Yeah, it's very important for us to be brave enough to do that. It's a very risky move, and every time we're able to clear that code that it's not there, that should not be there, it's a great achievement. Yes, that's a very good point. But because we already been there, the zombie code, that code that no one knows, especially what happens is when I implement something that's not going to need it, but is already being used, it's very hard to take it out. And that, I think it's also very important. That code that we just were able to remove, it's a great achievement.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate that. Okay, so we have our next speaker. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, after Stephen's talk. So Dom has kindly put the feedback form link into the chat. Should be in the bottom right hand of your Zoom window there. So if you don't mind leaving some feedback, obviously not everyone today will be a first-time speaker, but we will have some early speakers. And it's just so useful when you first get started speaking to get a bit of feedback. If something was interesting, if something changed the way you thought about a subject, any specific or particular bit where you thought, oh, that's really really helped. That's just amazing when you first start speaking. So please put some feedback on. There's some multiple choice parts where you can just, if it helped you or made you feel a certain way, you can just tick the ones that are most relevant. So if you don't mind, then yeah, please do leave some feedback for the speakers. Next person we have up is Sam. So Sam, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Can everybody see my screen okay? Is that all good? Yeah. So hi everybody, welcome to my presentation today, which is on the techniques I've learned to ask effective questions. So I'll go through my story and I suppose my issues that I've had with asking questions in the past, and the 4 techniques for asking questions that I've developed, and the key learnings and takeaways that hopefully I can deliver in terms of asking better questions from now on. So a bit about my story. So have you ever struggled to ask questions, whether it's a professional or in a conversation between one-to-one or several people? So personally, as an introvert, I'm really good at listening to people, but I really struggle to ask questions. I think for me, it's either because it's trying to do 2 things at once, or it's listening, but at the same time, understanding how I can engage better with the speaker. So in the past, I suppose my techniques would either be like a nervous laugh, or it would be, okay, or something. It would just be a really blunt statement. And I realised actually from, I suppose, recently that I've need to know how to improve this sort of skill set. Particularly, I don't know if in terms of anybody can relate, but I'm switching over careers from a marketing perspective to more user research. And within this, I suppose, realm, I need to ask questions, particularly to delve deeper in terms of users' motivations and how the motivations can relate back to the business needs. So I decided to have a deep dive in terms of wondering, okay then, so I've got this problem that I'm trying to solve. How can I deal with this? And I ended up developing 4 techniques for asking questions, and actually understanding how I can ask questions both, I suppose, in a spontaneous way, but then also do it on, I suppose, more planned sort of way. So the technique I've developed, the first one is preparation. So this for me is developing some generic questions that I could ask within both a social situation, but then also either in a professional context. That can be generic, that can be asked, can be developed within a situation. So for example, can you tell me more about the situation, or tell me more about da-da-da? I've also created I suppose, a filler phrase, for example, that's interesting, so I can think more about the question I want to ask. So from that sort of perspective, it kind of makes me feel like I'm listening to the speaker, but at the same time, I'm trying to tailor my questions in order to find out more about the situation. So technique number 2 is kind of something I'm passionate about, is recording myself or recording yourselves. Have a set bunch of questions that you can record yourself doing, and then sort of see how you respond to these sort of questions. But then also try and figure out ways of being more spontaneous. So for example, have those questions, but then mix them up from time to time to find out more about how to be a bit more spontaneous within the approach. So technique number 3 is look for inspiration. So personally, I really like reading blogs. I like reading about, I suppose, watching YouTube videos. I'm particularly quite interested in the Medium blogs at the moment, where they focus on conversations and developing techniques in order to engage better with people. I've also got some inspiration recently from listening to more podcasts like Tim Ferriss, who I suppose he knows how to, he uses questions to find out more about people's motivations, deep diving into the reasons why. And I've kind of taken that on board for, again, when I'm doing user research practice, in terms of understanding how I can actually find out more on a personal level to deepen that connection with that interviewee. And technique number 4 is practice in a safe space. So for example, this could be online, this could be with a family or friend, or it could be in a virtual space like this. Just ask like 1 or 2 questions that you feel, actually, I could ask and find out more how to build that connection with the speaker or subject area they're talking about. By developing it, I suppose, in this in a safer environment, you're building up that confidence to ask better questions and actually think, okay, then I can do this in a either planned scenario and sort of switch up to actually make it more spontaneous for you, and then help hopefully to react better to questions in the future. So in summary, hopefully I've given you some insight into, I suppose, my past issues with, I suppose, asking questions, using those 4 techniques. So preparing questions, looking for inspiration, recording yourself doing questions, and then also just practicing. So thank you very much for listening today. I've left my contact details here. I've also put my blog post up that I wrote recently about the subject area. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll be open for any questions you may have.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. That was great. I was thinking as you were talking about Tim Ferriss, he's somebody that I've listened to over the last years now, since the first book, but on the podcast. And he is just insanely good at asking questions. I always find he seems to ask the question that's on my mind and go deeper and deeper and deeper into a topic. So yeah, but no, very interesting. Speaking of questions, do we have any questions for Sam? Feel free to just unmute your mic and ask away if you do. Yeah, Helen.
Yeah, I mean, Sam told me about this talk yesterday. I was like, I'll sign up because I completely forgot. I seem to forget every 2 weeks. But no, I thought it was really interesting and really good. And I've never really thought about putting a framework around these things. I've always kind of made it binary in the past, is like you're good at it or you're learning to do it. I've never really thought about techniques to get better at it. So that was quite a good insight as well to think about. And I liked your notion of responding with almost questions that will give you time to think about your response. So like, that's interesting, because I think I do that, but I've never really thought about why I do that. So that was quite interesting for me to think about. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
But for anyone that hasn't seen Sam speak before, the recording yourself thing is something that she's becoming quite an evangelist for.
Yeah.
So what you've done 2 talks, haven't you, now, to the LJC about that challenge that you did of 30 days constantly recording yourself speaking?
Yes, I have. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're on there. Dom, do we have a link to that we could put up?
Yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'll grab them.
And we'll whack the link on the chat, because it's such an interest, given this is a speaking event and it was something we'd never heard of before. But yeah, like Sam spoke every day for 30 days and recorded herself doing it. And you can just see the difference it made was just huge. So yeah, check it out. Okay. So next up we have Tom. Is Tom here? I haven't seen Tom here.
I haven't seen him. I've emailed him, but I haven't heard back yet.
Well, that gives us an opportunity then. If anybody watching would like to speak, if Tom doesn't log on, so we'll shoot straight through to Alan Richardson. But if anyone would like to speak in the next 7 minutes, has something that they would just like to put up there, or is working on a open source project that they'd like to share, or has anything at all that they just want to ad lib and talk about, then feel free. If not, we'll probably pick on Helen to do something. I'm joking. But no, if anybody wants to say something, then let me know directly on the chat, and you can. But Alan, without further ado, I'll hand over to yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen? Yep. Okay, so what I want to talk about is following on pretty much unknowingly from things that other people have said, which is how do we learn, how do we encode the knowledge that we already have? Let me get these people out of the way. Right. So what we have when we're coding is we tend to rely on a lot of coding patterns, which is our encoded Java programming knowledge. And a lot of these are habits. We habitually use certain types of patterns. And ideally, we want to train our kind of coding muscle memory to use good coding patterns. So there are tools and processes we can use to help us do that. Now, I did extensive research by going on to Wikipedia to work out how habits are actually formed. Now, what we have is we have the context, the environment within which behavior arises. We have trigger events or things that we're going to do to try and achieve some sort of goal. Then over time, we repeat that to develop the habit. And depending on the outcome that we have, whether it's a reward or a failure, then we learn faster or kind of more slowly. So I'm not sure. Can you see that thing at the top of my screen? Hopefully not. So what we have is we get in the habit of developing a muscle memory when we're coding because the tools train us to have a muscle memory. I always say Alt-Enter when I'm like doing coding, even though I'm working on a Mac and it's not Alt-Enter as the key press, because what I haven't learned how to say show context action. So I'm using the presentation assistant plugin tool so that when I do an action, it shows me on screen what it is. And I get some feedback after I take an action as to what to actually call it. And that feedback process is reinforcing the words so that I can build up the habit of what I'm doing. The same as when I'm coding. IntelliJ shows us a lot of errors or issues or warnings on the screen. So we learn to hit the magic Alt-Enter key and to make things happen. And we get options around what we can do. So we're being trained to spot errors on the screen and then hit Alt-Enter to fix them. And so I now code backwards. So I actually code with errors, then do Alt-Enter to actually fix the code. That may not be a good thing, but that's how I code now. Now, a lot of our coding patterns are socially agreed, right? We have good coding patterns because we agree what they are on the team. And when we're pairing, we have fast feedback as to whether the code and process that we're using is a good one. When we have pull requests and we code and we put the code into version control and there's a review process, we get slightly slower feedback. But the outcome is the social acceptance of our code, the social acceptance that people will pair with us. And we reinforce that notion of goodness. Bad coding patterns often come when we don't actually know any better. We copy and paste from Stack Overflow, we do the same search, we copy and paste the same code. We don't know if it's good code, but it's code that seems to work, so we keep using that. What we really ideally want is some way of codifying that knowledge in our tooling so it's there when we're actually trying to write the code. And there are tools that can help with it, so I'll cover some of those. Now, IntelliJ has the intentions that are built in. If you go into preferences, you can switch on more intentions than you might know about, and they're in there. They'll highlight wrong code or code that it thinks is incorrect in the IDE, Alt-Enter, and you can quick fix it. There are tools like check style and spot bugs that will look at our code in batch. So we can run this after writing code, and it will review the code, give us some hints. Now, these are generic bugs or generic coding patterns. So they might not be completely contextual, and it's in batch mode, so it doesn't give us immediate feedback as we're writing code, but it's more like a pull request. But it's still a useful thing to add. Tools like SonarLint are real time. So as I go through the code, it will highlight any errors that are there. It doesn't tend to have a lot of quick fixes, but it will show us some issues in the code as we go through. But that real-time identification means that we're getting immediate feedback on what we're doing. Now, I work for Secure Code Warrior, and we've written a tool called Sensei, which is on the IntelliJ JetBrains marketplace. It does real-time checking of the code that we've got in there. And it highlights the errors in the code as intentions. The main difference this has is that it's custom. So you can easily create custom quick fixes, custom changing and amendment of the code, custom ways of searching in the code for particular violations. And because our goodness construct is socially constructed, if we're going through review processes or pull requests and we keep identifying the same patterns, then we can create recipes in here to find them and potentially fix them. And we can also run this during CI using the normal IntelliJ CI process. But because it hooks into IntelliJ in the way that normal intentions do, when the errors are highlighted in the code, then they're flagged, we can do Alt-Enter, do the magic key, and get the quick fixes that we've got in place. Now, what we're trying to aim for, because hopefully, I'm hoping that some of you will try the tool and give us feedback, because we want to see how this can work in different environments, because the aim is that it can be as custom as you need for your environment. So it works with the custom libraries you've created, the custom frameworks, the custom code, because you're encoding your team knowledge in there to help build habits of writing good code that is agreed upon in your environment. But all these tools will work together. In fact, there's a tool in there that I missed out because I didn't have the time to cover it, Key Promoter X, which uses the key presses. But I highly recommend using whatever tool gives you an edge. And if you really want to get custom code, then have a look at the Sensei tool, and we'll appreciate any feedback. But thanks very much. You can find me at Secure Code Warrior, or online as @EvilTester. So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Alan at all on that? Helen, yeah, so you've unmuted, yeah.
It's not a question as such, and I will prefix this with I work for JetBrains, but I will. I have actually seen the plugin and I've not looked at it in detail, so I will go take a look at it. It looks interesting. You know, you're extending the very notion of IDEs and customizing it for code bases. So that, I think, is quite an interesting concept.
Cool. I hope other people have a look as well.
Yeah.
A few others as well. Carsten, Gotham, do you have any questions there? Carsten first, mate.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, go on, Carsten.
Just a quick question. It seems like the difference between your tool and the other tools was that you can customize your tool and it doesn't come with a pre-built rule set like, you know, Spotbox or Checkstyle comes.
So we have a set of public rules in a public repository on GitHub. So we're building those up. But you're right. The real aim for this is that it allows you to customize it individually and make it easy to do that.
So just one question, like, is this customization shareable? Like, for example, if I do some kind of work and I say this is the best way to write this part, will my team members get to know as to, you know?
Yes. So you can share any of the cookbooks that you create. You can share them. We can have cookbooks on GitHub, and we can link to those and download them automatically into the IDE when the project starts up, or they can be stored directly in the project itself, so that anyone that opens up your project, if they've got the Sensei plugin installed, those rules will open up and be there in the IDE for them.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Thanks, Gotham, Carsten, and Helen, and of course, Alan. Alan, did you want to put a link up that people can go to if they want to go and explore, or can get through to yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'll stick it in the chat.
Beautiful. And unbelievably, we did have somebody come forward who is prepared to, with just 7 minutes warning, give a presentation. So Alex, thanks very much for that. Didn't we manage to rope you in the last time doing it this way?
I think you suggested that I could. I agreed to it, and then we had so many questions that there wasn't actually time for me to do the talk. So we'll see how this goes. I could just waffle for 15 minutes and then everyone will say all the time's over.
Waffle away. No, thank you for
give me sharing rights.
Yes, I need to make you a co-host. So thank you for coming forward. Though.
I should explain. I'm due to give a talk on the 19th. So this is actually basically the talk that I would be giving in 2 weeks' time, except that it has no preparation and no practice. Let's see. So we share that. Okay, so hopefully you should see my screen. Data pipelines are not data products. Thank you. Right. So last time I gave a talk here, I basically was a bit too ambitious. I did loads of animations. I tried to fit too much into the talk. And so this time I'm going to do something different. I'm going to get down to the basics. I'm going to try and desperately remember all the feedback that Carsten gave me the time before, so that I don't repeat the same mistakes again. We'll see. So what my field is data architecture. It's building data systems, and there's two very important concepts which I'm just going to try and describe to you today. One is data pipelines, and the other is data products. They sound very, very similar, and data engineers quite often mistake the two, thinking that they're working on one and they're actually working on the other. Let's see. Okay, so the first thing to realize is that basically what is a product? A product is something that gives value to people that they can use, and they get some benefit out of it. And sometimes products are internal, they're for the company to use themselves, and sometimes they're external, so they're used for customers or clients, and they are sold to them. And sorry, folks. Right. So what are data products? Now, data products are a particular type of software product in that they are primarily about making use of data to create a product, to create something useful for people. And this is not kind of like any old database or stuff like that. The whole point is that data is the fundamental reason why these products exist. It's become much more important in recent years when we've thought about things like autocorrect and all sorts of visualization tools that rely on data. This particular quote came from somebody who was basically analyzing a similar quote from somebody in the US government who was basically the chief data officer for the US government. So what's a data pipeline? So in essence, I love this diagram I've stolen from Astra. In essence, a data pipeline is any piece of software that takes data from one place, does something to it, massages it, and puts it to another place. Now, I've tried to describe it as very simple here. Some data engineers will argue whether it's really that simple, and one definitely did. This chap, Satish Chandra Gupta, wrote on Towards Data Science that a data pipeline consists of all of these activities. First of all, you've got to collect the data. You then ingest it into your data storage system. That might be a database, it might be a data lake, who knows. And then you prepare the data. So whether it needs to be cleaned or massaged, I don't know at this stage. And typically you're doing some sort of computation on it to learn something about the data. And then you're typically presenting it to the users in some sort of fancy way. At a very crude stage, it might just be a database that users can access, or it might be some visualization tool or something like that. Now, these two things sound very similar, but the important characteristic is that the product is what you're getting benefit from. And that the pipeline is just the tool you're using to provide that product. It's important to remember that you're not just creating code, you're creating something that actually gets used by people. So another way of looking at it is to say, well, what else do products have? Products should have a product owner, as in somebody who decides what those products are supposed to do. Typically, if you're an agile person or agile team, then you'll have a backlog, and you'll probably have a team that looks after that particular product. And most importantly, from my point of view, your product will probably have a service level agreement, as in how late can the data be ready, what's the downtime acceptable, and so on. Now, data pipelines are similar in some ways, but they are, because they're individual pieces of code, they share the same sort of characteristics that you might have for any other piece of code. Data pipelines in particular should be idempotent, as in you could, if something goes wrong, you should be able to rerun them. The rest of these are basically normal software engineering characteristics. You want them to be automatic. You don't want to have to sit there looking after them. You want them to be monitored so that you know if something goes wrong. You want them to be defined and testable in order to do TDD and stuff like that. The other one to bear in mind is that because we're talking about data, you want it to be scalable, and so sometimes the techniques you'd use on small data are not necessarily appropriate for big data. Now, a lot of these things are not necessarily of interest to the business, but you as software engineer, I'm assuming most of you as software engineers probably do care about such things. Well, is that fine then? Have I explained it to you? Is it all nice and simple? And the problem comes when you are running some data pipelines in order to provide a data product, and something goes wrong. Then what tends to happen is that your users will come and shout to you and say, look, why is my report not ready? And you have to explain, well, it's because one particular data pipeline has failed because of this reason outside of my control. I'm doing this to fix it, blah, 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 and so on. So the users tend to blur the understanding of what's a data pipeline and what's a data product, because they keep hearing, well, actually, my data pipe product is damaged because this data pipeline hasn't worked. So keep that in mind. Hopefully that hasn't been too short a talk, and ready for any questions.
Thanks, Alex. That was great. That didn't look like one that you hadn't practiced. So
I've written out a 600-word blog. So I've got most of the text already there, but it's nowhere as it is in my head. And it was good actually, because it meant that I wasn't worried too much about what I was saying. I was much more focused on how I was saying it. And it's things like I actually want to get a laptop stand that I can put above my monitor there, so that I can look there instead of looking there. Yeah. Well,
yeah, do you know
hopefully I'm improving. Hopefully.
100%. And getting into speaking, there's so many different bits to put together. Like it's not just kind of getting used to it and the slides and things, but there's so many, like the hardware and all that kind of thing. So
adding Zoom does add an extra layer of complexity, because
absolutely,
if I was just projecting my talk, I could see my notes. I've actually gotten a whole bunch of notes which I can't actually see because I can't put them in a different window to the one that I'm sharing. So yeah,
there's some subtle ways around it from what I understand. I know people have spoken about
I'll figure it out eventually, but with 7 minutes notice. So.
Yeah. No, I thought that was great. Did anyone have any questions on the content on data products versus data pipelines in the talk? Feel free to unmute and ask away.
Hi, Alex, I do have a question. So in your talk, you said that data pipelines are not data products. What's the damage that's done if people mistake these pipelines for products?
That's a very interesting question. I think I'm mostly approaching it from an architectural point of view, in the sense that the product will have a service level agreement, and the pipelines have internal service level agreements, so that the internal users know that they have to, the internal engineers know that they have to get this ready by a certain length of time. I think it's down to it's basically management. That it's easier to manage if you think about the product as something that the business uses and the pipelines as just components to that. That's an interesting question. I may add it into my talk if I ever do.
Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I'm quite keen to ask people other people who are doing talks questions. So if you think I ask too many questions, just mention it to Barry and Dom, and I'll stop asking questions so much.
Keep them coming, mate. Keep them coming. I like it. Okay, great. So I think that is almost all we have time for. So we've got about another 5 minutes left. In fact, I've just seen Tom has just come into the waiting room. Tom, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Tom, it could be a slight, you're in Belgium, right?
Oh no, I fucked up the time zones again.
Maybe just a bit, but we might be able to just squeeze you in because we've got just about 7 minutes left. Are you ready to go sooner rather than later, or do you want to put it off till next time?
No, I can go now if you want.
Nice. Okay. All right. Cool.
Well, let's just do this. So, host disable participant screen sharing.
Yeah, I need to make you a co-host. Hold on 1 second. See, it all turned out perfect, Alex. We managed to squeeze you in. Oh, good.
Let's see. It should be screen 2.
Just while Tom is sharing his screen, I will say if anybody that has seen the presentations today fancies giving it a go and would like to get involved next time, speak to Don Carlo or speak to myself, and we'd love to have you. So Tom, are you all set? Are you?
Should be. If you can see my screen now.
I can see you. I can't see your screen. I can just see you.
It's all fine. It's all fine. So let me just kick it off then. So good afternoon. I'm Tom. As you've noticed by now, I'm horrible with time zones. And today I wanted to show you something because I'm a bit of a nerd, which means I like video games. So as every ITer that eventually, well, as every person that is a gamer that eventually learns how to program, I decided to create my own little game. So let me just show you that now. Here we go. So I've made this little game that will eventually be something like a Flappy Bird. I don't know if anyone in the call actually knows what this figure is. No, nobody. A bit disappointed. So this is a Totoro from My Neighbor Totoro, one of the Studio Ghibli animated movies. So that's like the Asian competitor to the Disney movies. Doesn't really matter much. This is the small game I made. And I was looking at this game and thinking like, how could I do something a bit more special? Because now it's basically when you click, it does a jump. So I wanted to do something special. And I was looking around, and I actually need to switch my camera again, because not only do I have a digital one, I also have a very real one. Hello. And I was thinking, what would it be cool if I could use this plush animal to actually control the digital one? And then that means you need some kind of vision computing, vision machine learning or whatever. So I started investigating that, and it turns out that that's actually pretty difficult to achieve. You need a lot of test data. You need to train a model. Training the model takes hours. So in my quest to actually get this done relatively easily, because I don't have a master's degree in machine learning or whatever, I actually found a nice tool that I wanted to share with you today. And that's the Teachable Machine. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the Teachable Machine before. This is, in essence, just a website that allows you to quickly train a machine learning model. So you gather some data, you train the model, and then you export it. Let me just show you what that looks like for this project. So down here, let me just make my screen a bit bigger. So down here, you see that I have two classes. So those are the two things that I want to be able to recognize. So in this case, it's going to be open and closed. Why open and closed? Because I want to use my plush animal when his arms are open, and I want to know when his arms are closed. So it looks like flapping, you see. If he flaps real big, then maybe he can jump up. So those are the two things I want to recognize. Now I need test data for each of those two sets. And that can actually easily be done by selecting webcam. Oh boy, that's messed up. Great. It's not working. Should have said I left it till next week. Let me just real quickly turn this off and retry. Nope, that's messed up. I shouldn't have said that I was going to do it this week. I'm very sorry. So yeah, so that went completely down the drain. Normally, you would be able to just use your webcam to create a bunch of test images. You train a model, and eventually you can load it in here. I don't know what you want to do right now, Barry, because I entered pretty late and my demo is clearly not working, even though I prepared it pretty decently.
You know what? It was still really, really interesting. I had no idea about this this tool. I don't know if anyone has any questions about it or how it works or anything like that. But no, it was an interesting thing, and ridiculously brave to try and get a webcam to work as part of a lightning talk as well. That is, I mean, hats off to that.
Yeah.
That is, that's bold. But like so many that happens, it's the technology. Blame Zoom. That's what I usually blame things on. Alex, sorry, I can see you've got your hand up there. Did you have a question for Tom?
Yeah, Tom, are you using OBS to stream to feed into Zoom, or are you? Is that what?
Yeah, I am. It's actually just a virtual desktop, but that shouldn't be the technical issue here.
Oh, okay. I've had problems. I mean, I've been trying to learn OBS and but haven't tried it with this lot. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, normally this shouldn't have been a problem at all. But I'm also using my camera as actually my webcam because I'm on my desktop, so I don't actually.
I hear there's a spare slot going next time, so maybe you should ask Barry and Dom to do it next time as well.
I'll do my best not to mess up the time zones that time.
As Dominic has commented on there, I think it's a great intro to your next week's lightning talk. So no, it's yeah, perfect. We'd love to have you back, and yeah, how you were going to get that all done in 7 minutes, I'm amazed. But no, it was really good, really interesting topic, and we've never had anything like that before. So yeah, no, thank you for giving it a go.
I guess you'll see him again next week.
Absolutely. And we're just on the half-hour mark there. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad we did push to squeeze you in that time, and looking forward to next week's session of it. Can I just ask? I always do this, and it usually follows a long, awkward silence. Anyone that's watching that hasn't spoken at the LJC before, is there anyone out there that would be interested in joining Tom at a future session at all? Please unmute or add a little thumbs up icon or say something in the chat. Do anything to stop me talking. Anyone? No, I can't see any unmuting here. Guys,
we'll get them next time.
We'll get them next time. See, Helen, if Helen's still here, last time you spoke and we managed to get people into it. So we'll have to get you doing Q&A next time. In all seriousness though, we have slots every 2 weeks. It's fun, it's a lovely audience to speak to, and the impact getting into speaking can have on your career is just huge, and life really. Like, we've spoken to so many keynote speakers and so many people that have started with just a lightning talk and just watched as their careers have just gone all just crazy. And everyone at the other end says it's not just necessarily about getting promotions or anything like that, but you do elevate yourself amongst other colleagues, you elevate yourself in the industry, and you will find that the more you speak about topics that are of interest, like you can see even here, like you can see Alex McClintock's commented Totoro. So Tom and Alex now know they have something in common. And that happens en masse. The more you speak at events, at conferences, at user groups and all sorts, you finish your presentation and people will come and find you. They will ask you about it and you will just find other kindred spirits. So do please give it a go if you're keen. And other than that, thank you to everyone that's spoken today. Thanks for everyone for being here, and we'll see you next time.